How can you think like a platform today and move towards it? And what does that look like? And how can you add more value to your customers ongoing to try and get to this tipping point scenario where you're able to potentially build out your own APIs, to have partners start to build back to you, potentially have your own marketplace. It is an evolution component. It is a journey. And it's definitely, you can't call yourself a platform overnight.
Hey, Brian, good to have you.
It's great to be here.
You've been in Xero for a number of years, leading partner ecosystem. You had a chance to see the entire partnership journey, building a platform, building a marketplace, but building community around Xero. But at the same time, recently you moved to another side, and now you're consulting companies. So I'm excited about talking with you about this entire partnership journey. What are the best practices around partnerships, partnering with companies like Xero, and what do you think is partner excellence and how to become great in partnerships? My first question to you today is about marketplaces. So these days, a lot of companies like AWS, Microsoft, and Xero, they build marketplaces. And partnering with marketplaces is a big trend today because the smaller companies who look at companies like Xero and they're like, wow, there is like 1,000 apps on the Xero marketplace. So how do we partner with Xero? And how do we become successful with selling maybe to some of those companies? How do you advise approaching a company like Xero in terms of partnering with them?
Great question to sort of kick off with. I think there's a few ways to sort of look at it. To start off with, if you look at like a partnership 101, it's our company or a company working with another company, and how can we do more together, or what does that look like? And typically the partnership itself is set off with the expectations of maybe they've got customers that we want to go after together. Maybe we want to do some sort of brand work or partnership or some sort of promotion together where we're kind of like better together. And so, recently over at the Catalyst conference in Miami, Reveal talked around the concept of nearbound, of like, well, they define ecosystem as working together with other companies that are also already talking to your ideal customer, which so makes a lot of sense. But I think when it gets to working with the likes of a platform such as Xero or Shopify or Atlassian, Salesforce, the list goes on, the rules to partner do vary, right? The platform themselves are all set up for scale. And what they'll do is they'll set up partner programs intentionally for scale to be able to unlock with that. They can't work with everyone, and they'll have opportunity costs around who they work with and around it. And there'll be a bunch of criteria to work through and to provide a pathway for those partners to be able to accelerate their growth and to aspire to unlock some of the benefits. And so what we find is, as Scott Brinker puts it, most platforms have a really long, medium, and even longer long tail of partners who are building out niche solutions to the platform, which is by design. It makes a lot of sense, right? But they all want the attention of the platform themselves or whoever it is, and like, how can they unlock some of those customers around it? And typically what they'll do is they'll go to the source of the platform and look for opportunities on how can they work together around it. But it's in reality, it doesn't actually work that way for scale. So there's a few tips around the approach, which I typically like to recommend, and I'm working with a few clients now to help them accelerate their growth alongside as well. And, to kick off with, the 101 is the foundations, is you have to play by the rules of the platform to start off with, right? They will have partner programs in place, and to sort of start off with there as the start. Usually that'll involve an integration of some sort to add more value to a core platform, which is what the marketplace kind of offers, like you sort of summed up. So how can your solution add value to existing customers on there to even enhance the core platform, which unlocks the network effects, drives some viral growth back to it and adds a better together platform. So that's table stakes. It's foundational, and it's often the gates and the access to be on that marketplace to start off with. However, it's also important to build a deep integration and to add true value. Just because you can get access to an API or you can get access to some sort of marketing material or end up on a landing page, building for brand association is largely a waste of time in reality if you're looking to partner with them accordingly. So when you're looking at the integration, I understand every company has limited resources and you build out components in stages, and that's totally fine as long as there's a roadmap which is continued on. But have a consideration around like what would an integration between your offering and also the platform actually offer for the customers? Because if it's incredible, then what you're going to do is you're going to start some viral loops happening where the customers are going to start talking to others. You'll build some community groundswell. You'll build some advocacy in market and be able to get that going along. And then thirdly, I'd suggest, building to a platform. There's a bunch of ways you can grab the attention of it or increase adoption and awareness of your brand alongside it as well. And so, I'd encourage companies to consider, beyond the partner program and playing by the rules there is like, how do you truly complement the platform? If it's the orchestrator and you're got a complementer role, like how do you complement their offering truly to be able to offer more? And so what I mean by that is like, how can you support their marketing efforts? If they're doing comms components, how can you support your role alongside them and demonstrate you add a value? If there's thought leadership components or messages out there, how can you support that? If there's events you can get behind as well. And the more you're able to do this, you're able to build some groundswell, holistically with a 360-degree view to accelerate your growth alongside them as a partner in order to, reap some rewards in return and to be able to grow alongside them. However, just in summary and closing out this component, like it's not a case of seeing a big aspirational platform and thinking that they're going to provide a fire hose of customers back to you, which is the common typical approach as sort of people kick off with.
When you open a lot of VC sort of future-looking projections, you will see that partnering with marketplaces is sort of one of the top things. I mean, previously VCs love marketplaces in general, and now they love that their companies would partner with marketplaces, and they see sort of like great results from partnering with AWS and so on. Why do you think it's such a hype?
Well, the good news is the hype is moving from like an art to more of a science increasingly, and I'll talk to a few key metrics. If you're able to build to partnerships and deeply embedded, it's got a bunch of benefits, commercial and long-term benefits, which the VCs like to see. Start off with, if you've got connected apps to your application, typically you're providing better customer outcomes because you're offering more features combined, right? And so what that does start off with, it drives NPS right up. With that, if you're operating with a bunch of connected tools, you're more likely the switching costs become increasingly harder. So then suddenly the unit economics increase because churn is decreased with connected apps. Now, if they're also looking to use more of your application and embed in through the partnerships lens, then it's probably going to drive two other metrics to go with it. Potential ARPU of your product, because they're going to use more of it. And so if you've got various modules or components or add more users, they're likely able to add more. And so you're able to suddenly drive more ARPU driven through the partner influence, which then influences the lifetime value of those customers and the metrics which run out. And so for a VC suddenly, when they're looking at the macro, the metrics and the commercials of a business which has got heavy partner influence or able to attach with partners or grow alongside, they're able to have customers which are sticky, got higher ARPU, less churn, and providing better customer outcomes. So it's quite a desirable business. On top of that, if you're able to have effective partnerships, that are generating some growth to go with it, potentially driving leads in with you or unlocking new revenue channels, then you've got effectively a new sales arm, which is producing results for your business as well on the growing level. And so for the typical SaaS or tech business, you've got the opportunity to try and drive via your direct sales teams yourself, the digital version via product-led growth, or it's partner-led or partner-influenced revenue to go with it. And so there's a bunch of really healthy metrics which come with that, which makes the upside and the future lens of a partnership influenced business for a SaaS business and into the VCs quite an attractive opportunity to sort of look into.
Imagine that I would want to partner with Xero or like whatever other like marketplace. I would say I should have like a very crisp, better together story, right? Recommend advice in terms of like building this better together story, and maybe if you have an example of better together story that very good, that would be fantastic.
Well, when you're looking for a better together and building with a platform, hopefully and effectively, what you'd be doing is you'd partner with that platform, make a choice to do so strategically, is because you want to be able to offer the features of that platform which you don't have to build yourself. An example which I I love to talk to is about in Australia in the north, up in Darwin, there's an app called ServiceMate, which is iOS only, which provides the solutions for tradies to be able to service their jobs out in the field, move on to the next job, remain efficient, and pass that information back to Xero. And so what it means for them is that for a lean team who are focused on iOS by design only, they don't have to build accounting solutions. They don't have to build the invoicing depth or the functions, even though they offer some components of that themselves. And they're able to, prioritize and continue to work out building a really robust and deep niche of a trades and construction app for their clients and be able to build with that. And so through the possibilities unlocked through the APIs, they're able to push information across to Xero and able to grow effectively. And so what it means is for a solution like that is that they're not just a tradie app anymore. They're a tradie plus accounting solution in conjunction. And so there's a better together solution. Every one of their customers is going to have accounting needs. And so they're able to partner with an accounting solution to provide that. And so as they continue to build out their core focus, their product gets even stronger, enabling network effects, enabling strong NPS, and they're able to partner with Xero or other solutions to be able to provide and rely on that accounting functionality.
Great example. I think in your description somewhere, you mentioned beautiful customer journey. And I love this term. And it's kind of like shows your appreciation of customer focus, but also your considering customer to be almost like a precious. This is sort of at least my perception. So what is beautiful customer journey? Let me sort of ask this question back to you. And can you give an example of beautiful customer journey from your previous experience?
I think in today's digital era, I think it's anything which is just frictionless, easy, seamless, and able to get into other software, seamlessly and get on with it to start off with. And I feel like the product-led growth movement coming through is increasingly enabling that. And so in the easiest version of it, when you log into most software these days, it's going to provide you the option to be able to sign in with either LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, Xero sign-in capabilities or others, because it's allowing the data and the API capabilities to be able to grab information which you've already approved and be able to push it across. I feel increasingly that in-product contextual recommendations where you're at is the way forward to be able to increase adoption for it ahead. So for everyone listening or watching this, you're going to have your phone within proximity of you if you're not listening on a phone itself. And so for the apps that you operate your day-to-day business, if they were hard to log into, if they were really lengthy to sign up to, if they were complicated user journey around it, you're probably not going to use it much and around it. If you take a moment to consider the apps which you really love to use and are easy and ones you talk about, they're probably quite simple by design and they're quite straightforward. So as companies are building out their functionality and scaling, it's the consideration to think, how can they actually provide that just frictionless experience in the same way that the likes of when you order something on Amazon, if you can nearly just swipe, if you've got Amazon Prime and you just purchase something and it's at your door the next day. It's ridiculously easy. During the lockdowns all around the world where people are ordering more than they need on e-commerce, absolutely. With a young family myself, we got to know our courier very well. We nearly deserved to give him a Christmas card. He was coming to our door so much with various things that we were ordering. So how can you get your customers into an easy flow, an easy experience, one that provides delight along the way, ongoing, and how can you extend that into your partners as well? And what does that look like in terms of, is it an embedded experience? Is it in product? Or is it using the information you have to be able to pass information across in the API environment to just seamlessly have that data flow go both ways, ideally?
Question about like channel partnership versus tech partnership. How do you think about them? Where do you see overlap? And what are the things that should be true for companies to be successful? Is there like doing channel partnerships or tech partnership is company like Xero or maybe like smaller companies?
They work side by side and there will be crossover ongoing, right? So when I think of tech partnerships, I'm thinking of potentially embedded in product, technology solution partners potentially around where you're utilizing their capabilities to be able to operate and extend the value of yours platform ongoing. those can be things like reviews, embedded in component, like things like intercom, etc. They can be payment solutions to be part of your offering, which are embedded in. It needs to be frictionless. It needs to feel and look like your solution. You don't want to be bouncing out. It needs to be in product, preferably. And the idea is to try to drive more adoption of your own product around it. And so it needs to be a really tight relationship, and how can you sort of grow together? Whereas a channel opportunity is like, all right, well, how can we grow together ideally through an integration, to be able to expand the functionality of what you're doing, but also access potentially new customers, go faster, scale, all those sorts of benefits to go with it. And so tech partnerships, by design should grow faster if they're embedded in your product, whereas channel is something you have to invest with and grow and nurture and continue to explore further to really sort of reap the rewards and to add value to the other side and to yourselves as well.
You're speaking with thousands of CEOs over the course of your career about partnership, and you advise them on partnerships. Thinking about their partnership strategy, what are the mental models or like key concept that you advise them to start with when they think about partnership strategy, templates or things, kind of checklists?
Typically, partnerships is an extension of, it's another addition beyond sales and marketing, and it's usually someone who's within the business already, typically, and they're like, hey, go chat to these partners and see what can happen. So it's a little bit of a spray and learn in the past, and the methodology or thinking behind it often is quite immature in its early stages despite good intent. So it's just kind of like, go try something with these sort of partners. And so, but in today's era now, and pleasingly, it's increasing. And so it is moving away from less art or gut feel or an exec's view or an opinion to more towards science increasingly. And so the maturity of the partnership strategy is evolving, right? And so in terms of building out that partnership ecosystem muscle, there's a few sort of tips which I sort of typically tend to lean on. Like, we often talk to in the term of the ICP, ideal customer profile, but what does the ideal partner profile look like for you? So who's the spheres of influence, as Jay McBain says, around you as a business, to be able to, where you're potentially sharing customers, and what does that look like? And so from there, you're able to look at like the TAM, the SAM, and like, what is the opportunity around to go with it? And once that's sort of established, the next step is to be able to look at, right, well, what do you actually offer this other partner? Everyone you want to approach on a partnership lens, they're going to have conflicting priorities. They've got an opportunity cost themselves around who they partner with and why. And depending on the size of them, they may or may not have partner programs or, gates around who they partner with and choose to use their resources with. So it's not a case of just go chat to every partner and hope for the best kind of component. You need to really lead with value to do that. And so how do you be able to do that and go about it there's a few different ways. Firstly, if you do have mutual customers today, can you shine a light on those? How can you provide case studies? How can you provide a lot of reviews, preferably on the other partner side as well, to demonstrate the value that you are bringing alongside them? Also, make sure you've got a really clear value prop around how you differentiate yourself compared to others in your field as well. In the past, especially in the reporting space at Xero, it's a very crowded space as people use the information available in the accounting solution and build out solutions to provide management reports, cash flow insights, forecasting, all a range. And it is a crowded space by design. And so it's essential to be able to have a really clear, defined value proposition of what you do. So when others are looking at for solutions in the space, they understand what you do differently, what it looks like, how it feels, and how you add value to go with that. And if you're able to demonstrate that to your intended partners to go with it, then you've gone a long way as for them to be able to talk about you to you internally and share the message and to go with it with the approach. And from there, if you're able to give some quick wins early on and build some groundswell internally, it's as much as building internal stakeholder endorsement and awareness as it is externally out to customers to build the future of your channel. Because, partnerships is an area of the business which does need to be invested in ongoing, and it's something that you do need to water in order to grow and to build rewards ahead.
Can we touch a little bit more on what people tend to do wrong? What are the typical mistakes that people make when they start partnerships, or like when they try to scale partnerships? And how would you advise them to avoid that?
So a few things. If there's no strong integration to start off with, then you're not going to provide the customers much delight. If it's buggy, or there's issues, or you don't have good support docs, or it takes a while to get into, it's not frictionless, then it's not really going to be an impactful partnership. It's not going to lead anywhere. You might get some buzz around an announcement of a partnership or whatnot, or some media around it, but it's not going to actually provide ongoing value. And so the partnership will stifle. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, it was in my time at Xero, it was every second week where some upcoming aspiring partner would reach out to me via various tentacles, either through someone across the business or externally, or an introduction that they want to chat because they've chosen previously, they've chosen Xero as their key partner and they want to do more of them. How can we explore doing more to them? And, essentially what they're looking for is hoping to provide that fire hose of customers for them without actually considering their value proposition, how they would partner with, considering the current partner program. So I'd see this every week. I'd see it all the time. And so, we'd say back to them in return, is like, what are you offering, back to us? Why would we prioritize around it? Have you seen our partner program? And it's actually a lot of homework they could have done before even approaching. And so, despite really good intentions around it, we just failed to gain traction in that way.
Very interesting point. But at the same time, you as a partnership manager, not only you, but also like partnership managers who is partnering with you, need to think like, how do I engage partners? How I stay top of mind, right? Maybe if integration is amazing, it kind of bubbles up in your mind itself. But generally speaking, engagement is one of the big questions. So how do you advise partners to keep their partners engaged?
You got to stay top of mind and have regular engagement across the board, right? So, but the points I made earlier around how you're engaging across marketing efforts or comms efforts or webinars, or what opportunities are you presenting to their sales team? How can you understand their sales team's KPIs around what they're trying to achieve? How can you be a strategic asset to work alongside them to achieve their goals? And how can you play a part? And it is a case of the more you give, the more you receive. And transparently, it's hard for a small startup or someone who's getting going and looking to scale up to add a lot of value around it. And so, if anything, you need to overinvest in that partnership in the early stages to really understand the drivers of the major platforms or the major partners you want to work with, to try and understand if there's a Venn diagram of where you play alongside them. And if anything, if you can play a complementary role and walk alongside them as someone that they can use in their sales tool or in their toolbox to be able to talk to and about around the possibilities, then you're on the journey with them, included in their sales messaging, not against them, or something that's a nice to have down the side, right?
That is very good insight, actually. So you need to like embed yourself into different facets of the work, right? It's not only product, but also sort of marketing and sales and maybe community building as well. That's a very good point. Let's switch gears a little bit and then talk about partner incentives, right? Until recently, companies were incentivized typically by commission, and now it seems to be changing from just pure commission to a way to influence revenue and different sort of ways to get the same results through different type of motion. What do you think is the best practice today for incentivizing partners, and where do you think this trend is kind of going?
To start off with, there's a few layers of when you think about partners, right? So you've got the technology partners, like you said, your channel partners. I mean, you've got the likes of digital and agency partners to go with it. And you could rattle off a bunch of subcategories to go with it. Fundamentally, what you're looking to do is partners for is to either onboard, potentially recruit, enable, and support your existing customers, or bring new customers to your platform or to your business to go with it. And so what's the motivation for them to do so? So, in years gone by, it was the hopes that there would be like an affiliate program or a referral program, but that if they recommend or implement your software, that they get a small clip of the ongoing revenue component. Now, it is still about and relevant today, but it's not the focus as much. Especially if you're looking to build out a channel for digital or agency partners, what they're looking for is either project or service-based work ongoing to help complement, add value to their customers on that side. So how can they do ongoing projects? I think a great example in recent years is just the rise of Shopify Plus and this, and the digital agencies which have spawned up or, shifted their focus towards it. It's not a case of just installing Shopify Plus and then see you later. It's all of a project work around it. How can they optimize that website? How can they improve conversion? How can they improve payments? How can they drive adoption? Is it marketing? Is it some, Facebook, Google, SEO? There's a whole range of services which support around it. HubSpot's done a fantastic job, and typically in the US, it really is stood up on a pedestal as the leading partner program deliberately because of the agencies and that it's able to support around the edges of it. And so the primary driver for these types of agencies is that ongoing service work to help their clients win and succeed. And if software is a part of the solution or the enablement for that, that's phenomenal. But it is moving away from the previous focus of just providing a small introduction fee or a referral fee or component as a motivation driver for that. It's a short-term lens.
We spoke previously with Jay McBain, right? We talked at length about influencing customer over the course of the entire journey, and not only on a buying decision, but also later, and also on kind of retention and cross-selling and so on. That's sort of brilliant. Let's talk about sort of partnership excellence, right? Like we discussed, you are now CEO of your partnership consultancy, and it's a great move, very, very trendy. And thank you so much for actually bringing all this expertise that you built over the last years and spreading it across multiple companies, including actually sharing this with us. Let's talk about partnership excellence. What are the main sort of attributes of partnership excellence in SaaS companies when they start thinking about partnership program? What are the things that should be true for this partnership program to be successful from sort of beginning to kind of scale into? Maybe you would walk us through like a sort of, beautiful partnership journey, how it's typically kind of emerging.
There's a few characteristics. So like if you had a clean slate and so we're going to let's build the perfect partnership function, let's sort of walk through what that would look like. Let's start off with, you need exec support from the top down around. You need it to be enabled and supported by the exec levels component to sort of say that partnerships is not just an extension of a sales team of hopes and dreams and see how you go. It's actually an important strategic asset for the business to pursue around it. As you're able to build out that partnership muscle, wrap a community around it, have deep embedded integrations, it's also a competitive moat against others in your space as well, because you can offer more in conjunction with those to go with it. And so with that and with the exec support to go with it, you need clear objectives about what partnership is and also what it isn't. And the patience to realize that you need to invest in it over a period of time and water it and grow it in order for it to bear fruit and for it to grow into a useful revenue unit of adding value of the benefits of which I've mentioned before. And so making sure that expectation is across the business around how you can support.
What is the time horizons that you typically sort of advise to allocate for initial stage of partnership program?
It depends on what the objectives is to come back to it, right? If you think it's going to be just a new revenue channel and it's just going to pour leads in, it's unrealistic. You can't really have a view on that until you've done a market scan and you've had some initial engagements with those out there in the field to see what existing offerings are around there, what your partners' objectives are. And so you nearly need to go do the due diligence, do the market research, and then come back, and then you would have an answer around what is the lead time for it to actually generate component, right? Because sometimes partnerships, it's actually not all about just driving new revenue in. Maybe it's a component around adding more value, or it's a feature we don't have and we really need someone to partner with around it. And so if you go back to the objectives of what the partnership is, then you would start to be able to assess and sort of say, all right, well, how long is this before it's actually going to provide that solution or unlock a channel to be able to go with and have a realistic view. It's not a case of start a partnerships function today and then in 90 days or 6 months or a year or 2 years, you've got these immediate turnkey results to go with it. So it is curated, it is bespoke, it is intentional, but it's also complex because it's also intertwined with other partners' needs and how does that function and how does it sit alongside?
Very good answers.
So going back to the question around, what else can you do to try and build the perfect blueprint of a partner program to go with it? It is an evolving component. And so the partnership program, which you'll build out this year or in this cycle or in this sprint, next year and the next component will refine and it will be improved upon. And it's foundational work which you'll do to be able to refine it, and what it looks like and the purpose of it will shift and change as well. And that's where if you can over communicate internally, continually update your exec stakeholders to go with it, as well as your partners alongside you, then you're able to evolve it for the good of the company to progress ahead. And so I haven't seen many examples of a turnkey partnership which overnight just floods in new all the benefits to go with it. It is an evolution and it is a layer on top of it. If you take a step back and look at the typical journey of a SaaS company, they'll typically get some traction themselves. They might be able to add more ARPU or add more value. And then from there, if anything, partnerships is another layer which adds on top of and grows once it's nurtured over time to go with it. With that approach and that in mind, it becomes a strategic asset of the business over time if invested in properly along the way.
Great answer, really. And even though it doesn't give very definitive components, I think it's so true what you just said, because it takes time. You need to test on the market. You need to see what's working, kind of iterate on that. When it comes to great partner program, right? Obviously, Xero is one of them. HubSpot you mentioned. What are the sort of others that you refer people to look at as a great references?
I think Shopify's done a great job. They've had explosive growth around the edges to have their program and very clear definitions to go with it, what it means to partner with it as well. Stripe's got an evolving partner program, which they're building out increasingly over the last few years. I see Deputies just introduce their own partner program and looking to bring that to life. And so the partner programs that work well, from what I've seen and through previous research as part of some of this work, is it's very clear, digestible around what's required to participate, but also what benefits you get in return. And furthermore, have an aspirational goal to reach towards to unlock more benefits ahead. So the idea of a good partner program is that you get people in, you get them invested. Effectively, you're reducing a lot of questions coming back to the direct team because they know where they sit within the program of work. But if you can also provide incentives for them to further invest in the partnership with a North Star that you want them to get to, then they'll keep adding more value to your customers as they look to improve that partnership across the board. And things like, is it adding reviews? Is it improving the integration? Is it providing more customer delight? Is it building to other APIs? Is it support around events that you want them to come into? Is it sharing your messaging? If you're able to clearly articulate that through the partner program, then that's where you're able to start to scale your efforts as well. Because it moves from being a one-to-one partner relationship or engagement to a one-to-many, which is in reality really hard to do.
You was in your senior role in Xero, kind of leading partnership ecosystem, and now you're on the other side. I'm sure that a lot of people come to you and ask great, Bryan, so I have this SaaS business and now I want to be a platform. And platform is a very trendy word as well, right? Maybe even more trendy than partnership. What are the sort of top 3 questions that you ask them?
Platforms are the label sticked on a lot of tech companies today. There's various definitions of platforms that's still playing out. I like to refer to how Marshall and whatnot define it, and Peter Evans and those guys, that it's typically, and it should have, an open set of APIs, a set of governance as you grow, but be able to provide and unlock value on both sides, which is available through the APIs and what's possible. And so you're able to, by design, have a better together story to go with it. Many companies call themselves a platform by potentially offering many modules or various features, or that there's various functionality and therefore they're a platform to go with it. But in my understanding and interpretation of the definition of a platform, they're not quite there yet to go with it. And so they're probably realistically more a SaaS company with various modules or various offerings or features of what they do to go forward. And so in terms of moving towards being a platform, I like to use the matrix from the BCG group, which provide it's from the complementers through to becoming an orchestrator of the platform. And the roles and responsibilities of the platform change as you get bigger. Typically, a platform has got critical mass where they've got enough customers where there's a tipping point where we're able to scale around it. And that's what attracts partners to wanting to build with them, because they've got a mass of customers they want to go after. However, the orchestrator of the platforms, they have a bunch of rules which they have because they do own that customer base. And so they are the influence of power in that circumstances. They're able to set the rules of engagement to go with it, and they're able to affect the influence they have to their customers and also to their partners alike. But as those upcoming partners who complement the platform or are growing with, as they get bigger, they'll add more features to the front end of theirs, and they'll be able to get closer to the platform themselves. And some make the transition right across to being a platform, but that's a lengthy journey of extremely complex moving parts to go with it. And so I often advise, come back to your question, is like, how can you think like a platform today and move towards it? And what does that look like? And how can you add more value to your customers ongoing to try and get to this tipping point scenario where you're able to potentially build out your own APIs, to have partners start to build back to you, to be able to potentially have your own marketplace, be able to do that. But it's a journey to be able to get to there. And in reality, and the opportunity that I see in market is that most companies are on the way there. Not all of them. Some choose not to and just build a core niche and stay there. But it is an evolution component. It is a journey, and it's definitely, you can't call yourself a platform overnight.
Totally agree with you. My last question, big topic in itself, and I hope that we may discuss it in one of our next conversation. But I would still want to touch it today, and it would be around communities, right? Communities are now considered to be essential. Xero builds amazing community around it, very engaged. And you mentioned in one of our conversations that it was, super involved and engaged, like even during like sort of hard times during COVID and so on. What are the sort of essential things that you think people should be mindful about communities, and where would you put communities versus sort of partnerships as a sort of chicken and egg scenario? What is chicken? What is egg? Like where communities fits into this like entire picture?
Communities are strategic assets of organizations to wrap around their product and offerings to go with it. You can't buy a community or turn one on overnight. You build, you grow it. They're built on trust. You're building advocacy of your product and their interconnectivity into other users or others who are similar traits around it to be able to do it. And so the way I see communities is that there's different layers to it. If you're building a partnership one-to-one, it's back and forth. But if you're to build a partnership ecosystem and build one-to-many, then you're able to wrap a community around that. And what that means is you're able to empower everyone around that, around the core platform or the core offering, to how they can all grow together and be an asset. And you've also got communities of your customers, and how do you unite them and build advocates. And I think those in product-led growth, the likes of Figma or Miro, or Jasper.ai and others, they're able to spin up a product and build up this advocacy of customers who are, the early adopters, and put them all together in a group. And communities should be wherever your customers hang out. So whether that is a Facebook group, Slack groups, Discord, Telegraph, doesn't matter. It's about how do you bring them all together to have regular engagement, to be able to further to drive effectively the network effects of your offering around it. But it's, using just your solution is not the core benefit. It's actually connecting others to be able to enhance their own usage, connecting them who are doing like-minded work around it, to build trust, to enhance rapport. And they are increasingly a strategic asset. And, the term in the US is community-led growth, which has only evolved in the last 2 years. It's just a label on something which has already existed and has been around for some times. And it is evolving quickly, that those who have got a strong established community, one that they protect and nurture, are leading the way, and they'd be hard to take down, because you can't just pick up that community and transport it elsewhere. It's embedded, and it is full of advocacy, which is really, something that a lot of companies should strive to have.
I love what Marshall said about communities, that it's kind of much easier to attach product to communities than the other way around. But at the same time, you need to be able to build community, sort of big community, and it's not trivial as well. That's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. As a way of wrap this up, tell us a little bit more about your consulting business, which is hockey stick advisory, and what are the things that people can reach out to you for, and how they can connect with you?
I've set this business up and established it just a few months ago on the back of a lot of organic conversations I've had over the last few years, where other companies across the region who are scaling up, we're looking to work out, how can they build the partnership ecosystem muscle? How can they establish and connect a community? And how can they evolve towards being a platform? And so with that and the current maturity levels of the partnership industry, I saw an opportunity to be able to set that up and help the next generation of companies build out this muscle. And so with that, people can reach out to me via LinkedIn or via my website, hockeystickadvisory.com. And what I'm looking to do is I like to get in there and do an assessment of their capabilities today, what's required for success, how can they sort of set them on a path of forwards to be able to build and create impactful partnerships which actually do generate returns for their business depending on what their objectives are, and help them scale faster. And so, the name is a bit of fun in the name of being hockey stick. Of all companies, appear to have this hockey stick growth aspirations, and the sort of mandate of my company is like, at least I want to help them get in that direction faster. And I feel that enabling partnerships is a key strategic asset to be able to do so. And so that's what I'm sort of setting out to achieve.
The insights that you shared show the depths of your understanding of the subject, and this is actually sounds sometimes as a simple subject, but it's not. It's like so many intertwined parts that create partnerships, and the things that you need to be capable of doing, of building like a great platform, sort of the level of zero, for example. I look forward to following your success in your advisory, and appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Roman. It's been great to connect, and look forward to having our conversations ahead as well as we both sort of path our ways forward.